Hi, I am Kajer on two wheels and this is the Benelli 752. The Benelli 752s. This is Benelli trying to compete directly with the Hondas, the Kawasaki's and the Yamahas for the 700cc parallel twin engine range, meaning the middleweight naked bike, the modern middleweight naked bike. So this is, again, a parallel twin engine developing 77 horsepower, not bad, and costing just about the same as all the others. It's a mid-range price, more expensive than the MT-07, less expensive than the Honda, so it's the in-between. And that might be a problem, because Benelli is not known for expensive bikes. It is known precisely for the opposite. Well, known nowadays after the resurgence of the brand. It is known for cheap, good-looking, but cheap bikes. This is good-looking, but not cheap. So what does this bring to overcome that brand issue? Coming up to the front, you have the stock tires are already Pirelli Angel STs, which are really nice. Okay, this is a good point, considering some of the brands like to put in some pretty horrible tires stock. But that's not even beginning. So what we have here, we have Brembo brakes, Brembo braided brakes. You can't really see, but these are steel mesh braided brakes. Okay, so you've got some proper Brembo brakes with a huge disc. And you have inverted, fully adjustable suspension for compression and rebound. Actually not fully, because you don't have tension, I think. That's the only thing that's missing. But you have compression and rebound. You have inverted fat 50mm suspension. And it is not any suspension, it is Marzocchi. So they're not kidding around with this. Then you have your full LED headlamps, high beams and low beams, and indicators front and rear. There's no filaments here, only LEDs. And you've got a pretty cool looking TFT dash, and you've got these funky looking mirrors, and you've got this funky looking tank. It just looks, this green is just awesome. The camera will not do this justice. I love this green. It's a deep green with little sparkles in it. It's awesome. Just look at it. The whole bike looks absolutely gorgeous. And then you have, and I really like this little detail, this exhaust. Would you believe this is a stock exhaust? Better believe it, because it is. They're cheating a bit, because this tiny end is just the exhaust end. The exhaust itself is under here. It's that big fat fishing bowl nicely tucked in under that. So because of that, this looks great. It sounds great. It's got a great air intake sound also, so it gives a good overall sound for the bike. Continuing back, after the awesome exhaust, you have this beautiful swing arm, this double tubular swing arm, which I love, and this license plate mounting spot, which looks very funky. The whole bike looks great. It actually looks kind of Ducati-ish, with a very clean tail with the license plate stuck in here. The indicator's actually down here, which is very unusual, but very, very cool. I forgot to tell you about the rear suspension. It is only adjustable for preload, but it is what it is. So this is a mid-range priced bike with more than mid-range specs. So it's a usual priced motorcycle with unusual specs. Here we are, the test track. 3, 2, 1, go! It is fast, but it never surprises.
very, very planted. Feels great, feels like I am glued to the ground. The rear goes light under braking, which is perfectly normal. The brakes are very, very strong, as in any sort of lighter touch and you are braking a lot. Very powerful brakes. The rear brake is almost too powerful. Any sort of little touch on the lever and it's too much. This is quite a low revving engine though. Oh, so nice to do. Yeah, here the great suspension, the expensive suspension really shows its power. Okay, sands. I want to go straight on the sand. So let's check out the brakes down here. But so far, pretty impressed. I was not expecting this efficiency. Because reading the specs, this seems too heavy. Not powerful enough. But yet, it works very well. Yes, the engine is not as spiffy as you would expect from a 750 engine with 77 horsepower, but it is still pretty nice. It's more gradual, predictable. Let's try braking. 3, 2, 1, on behind, brake. Oh, good brakes. These are really strong brakes. Now I wasn't even braking as hard as I could. I could even do it more. But great handling on the bends. Really great handling on the bends. That was fantastic. Now let's see on bad pavement how this copes. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be bad because this suspension feels pretty stiff. Let's see. Then again, it is good suspension, so it shouldn't be horrible. Although they're fixing this part, so this is always a journey of discovery every single day. Okay. So far, so good, but this part is still relatively nice. Let's see what happens when we get to the really poor parts down there. Let's try locking up the rear here. Yeah, it's stiff, but it works fantastically well here. That I was not expecting. Comparing this to my last test drive, which was an MT-07, this is miles better. It is substantially better than the softer springs or softer suspension MT-07, which is quite impressive, to be honest. So that's why you pay money for good expensive suspension. It's because of this. It can be firm and planted on the twisties, and then it can still cope with the less flat stuff. Now let's see how it goes on some fast corners. Yeah, that was 160 kph by accident, because I put this in miles per hour, so I was wondering, why am I only doing 100? Yeah, that's why. Oops. So it doesn't feel fast, but it is fast. Doing 160 there is not for all bikes. Not by a long shot. It doesn't have that instant torque that makes the Yamaha and the Z and the Kawasaki so fun, but it does just keep pushing. The numbers don't lie. That's the whole point. But you don't feel it. It's a very predictable engine. It's fast but still relaxed. Oh, and the brakes also squeal a lot. I'm not really sure why, but it could be just this unit. But here on the fast corners, which is what we're here with, horrible pavements, it just keeps going with no issues at all. Seriously, this suspension is great, and I'm really impressed about this. I was expecting this bike to be a bit meh here. Seriously, just normal, just okay. The kind of bike that I can push the limits, but I don't feel very comfortable doing so. It's a Benelli after all. They don't have that long-term expertise, or at least this new Benelli doesn't. Except that apparently they do, because this is great. This is oddly good in here. I was seriously not expecting this. Even the fact that the rear likes to be a bit nervous on corner entry when you're braking is nice. It just gives it a bit of emotion that it doesn't have otherwise. It's awesome. That was unexpected. Now, in town, this bike is a bit more what I was expecting. It's a bit meh. Why? Well, it suffers a bit from a low steering angle, so sometimes parking can be challenging. Can't really show you while I'm riding. And it suffers because of the weight. The weight is, out of the top of my head, I think it is 228 kilograms. Maybe it's 238, I don't know, but it's very, very high for a naked bike. So that makes this bike heavy. It feels like an old school inline 4 cylinder, seriously. And because of that, also, the engine isn't as spiffy as the uber lightweight Japanese competition. Again, this is competing for it directly. The price is the same. So that's a bad point. Except, it's not really a bad point, because believe it or not, there are those that don't really want such a nervous bike like the Kawasaki and the Yamaha. They don't want something that's just as nervous, that likes to jump off every single red light that fast, that wants to change direction that fast. They want something a bit calmer. They're no longer young blokes, so they still want a naked bike. They don't want a 1000cc engine. They want a middleweight, but they want a more forgiving, a more easygoing middleweight that can still go fast, and that's this in spades. So there's no point in wasting money trying to make it very light if there's a small but existing market for it, which kind of makes sense, because while the three Japanese ones are very much fun and they're great bikes, you cannot dispute this, they can be quite tiresome, because they're so nervous and so agile that they can become tiresome. And if you don't want that, you don't really have an alternative. But now you do. And it looks great. Comfort is still pretty high, although I must say this seat is a bit too stiff for me, but I have a relatively sensitive bum. But comfort is high. It's spacious enough. You have at least two seating positions, one further back on the wider part of the seat and one further forward where you're sitting up a bit straighter. So it is spacious. You have a good sitting position. The suspension, because it's adjustable and it is pretty darn good, it's quite comfortable. Even though it's very stiff, it is still quite comfortable. And if you're going at this speed in these kinds of avenues, it's fine. You only really notice issues when you start going into the really tight old towns, like old European towns. There you get that, oh, this is a bit not really that good. It's just meh. It really is like the old school 4 inlines, which were fine. Okay, it's actually fine. It's not bad. I had an XJ6 for a pretty good amount of time, and it's fine. It's just, yeah, it's heavy and it's a bit tiresome because you have to lug that weight around, especially when you're stopped or parking. But it's perfectly fine. It's not catastrophic. It just becomes meh because the competition weighs 180 kilograms or less, which is like 40 less than this. That's the only reason why this goes meh. If it wasn't for those, it'll be, yeah, this is pretty nice. It's a well-rounded do-it-all bike that it's quite comfortable. Goes fast enough. It's never dazzling. It's never exciting, the engine response. It's very fast. It has the power. You easily look down on the highway and you're suddenly going 170 and you weren't expecting it. You're just going, there's a lot of wind, and you look down and whoops, too fast. So it is fast, but the initial launch like this in second gear, this was full throttle. In none of the Japanese things I would be on top of this Golf, or maybe on the car ahead, so I would just fly over it. Nothing much happens. Another thing with this, and this now begins to look like a design decision. The gearing seems very long. I do a lot of stuff on this bike in first and second gear, which is not normal. So it does look like the gearing was purposely made long, precisely to give it this more relaxed feel. So that issue is not quite an issue. Could be just a design decision. Benelli could have thought, hey, why make this light? There's so many light ones. It's not like, let's make it heavy on purpose so it's bad. No, it's like, there's no point in making it very light and then having to tone the engine down to be a bit more relaxed. Let's save money on weight savings. Just make the bike pretty. Never mind about the weight, as long as it doesn't exceed something ridiculous. Let's just make a more relaxed ride. Something just to roll around easily, like the rest of the range. Because Benelli isn't doing sport bikes. The TRK 502 is an extremely slow bike, but that fits its purpose. It's a bike to go slowly on. It's not a sports bike. The 302 is also relatively slow, but it's also not a sports bike. It's a cheap, bare bones, naked bike, so there's no point in making it super light because that would increase the price, or super fast. So it's like it's a design decision, so it's not an actual problem. It's just, well, it's a feature. Not everyone's going to like it. Some people are going to absolutely hate this weight, but some people will actually like it. I know at least one guy who will pick this up and say, this is great, it really feels like my old inline 4. For some reason. Okay, there's guys like that prefer that. They prefer the more boring bike.
So, back to Ramemoto to deliver the Benelli 752s. I forgot to tell you this previously. This is the 752s. There's another version, the C, the Cruiser, which does not have the suspension, does not have the brakes. It has suspension, it has brakes, but it costs €1,000 less. So that's the cost of this. That's the difference between the S and the C, roughly speaking. So what did I think of this bike? Well, to be honest, my first contact with it was a bit negative. First, I got hammered by rain going home, so that always leaves a bad feel in the back of your head, but whatever, let's move on to that. Rain and no rain gear, so that was awesome. Then I went to do the close-up shots and a few riding shots in town, in Old Town, European Old Town, really tight. And there I was a bit concerned because there this bike was just average, normal, which is not a bad thing, but an average bike by a relatively new European brand. This is a new brand, Benelli has been researched. Is not really going to cut the mustard against the Japanese. The Japanese would just trounce an average bike at the same price tag. everyone would go buy the Japanese and this would not sell. So I got worried. So what now? This is troublesome. I'm going to have to say that this bike will not sell. Well, then I took it to the test track, and wow, what a thing, what a difference. On the test track, this expensive suspension and these expensive brakes brought up a really, really cool bike. Suddenly this went from an absolutely average bike, a tad heavy, to a really good road going bike. This is not a street fighter. This is not a naked for the streets, which is very odd. This is more for the open road. It's more like a more sport naked. Pros and cons, because they come directly from from my own experience. Pros and cons. Pros: suspension, awesome. Suspension is absolutely fantastic. It is really nice and it works really well on the open roads. In town, it also works a bit stiff. You can adjust it. I did not, but you can adjust it to be a bit softer. It's a bit stiff, but it still works. It's high quality suspension, so you notice that it's a stiff suspension, but it's not uncomfortable. It works, unless you go over some really strong potholes, it's fine, and you really appreciate that it's actually very nice. The brakes are awesome. They're a bit, if anything, they're too big. It's very easy to lock up or try to lock up the front wheel due to ABS will be constantly activating because these brakes are huge. On the other hand, if you're doing highly legal speeds on the highway, this will stop the bike really quick. Okay, it's not going to be reaching the limit of the brake. You're going to be reaching the limit of the tire at nearly any speed. These are ridiculously large brakes. I love them. Makes me remember. It reminds me of another European brand which really likes to oversize their brakes to ridiculous amounts. Okay, another pro is this TFT dashboard, which looks lovely. I really like the little detail of it changing configuration at night. It's not just changing color, everything changes. It's a bit silly, but I like these techie silliness. It's a fun thing, okay? It's a fun thing. It's a little fun detail. That's another pro. The dash is really cool. Even though it does not have an onboard computer, that's a con. I should have left that for the cons, but let it go. Then we have this exhaust. Sounds top, lovely. You heard it tons of times. This is a great sounding exhaust. It is designed to have this great sound together with the engine intake sound. So both together give you music as you ride along, and this is a stock exhaust. It's amazing how a stock exhaust sounds. And would you believe, looking at this, that this is a stock exhaust? Very well done, Benelli. I am really impressed. Japanese blokes, this is how you do a stock exhaust, okay? It's not supposed to sound like a sewing machine like the other ones do. It's supposed to sound like this, okay? Fix that on the other ones. Benelli, top. And the other pro is just look at it. Just look at this bike. It's absolutely gorgeous. Even when I thought this was just an average bike, I was like, this is not gonna sell. It's just an average bike. I would leave the bike, and when I was returning to the bike, I was like, whoa, that really looks cool. That's a really cool looking bike. And it turns heads too. Parked in front of work, people would walk by it and look. No one looks at the Japanese lightweight bikes. First, they're a dime a dozen. Second, they're just average looking. It's a motorcycle. It's a naked motorcycle. Fine. But this draws looks. I love this tail. I love the looks on this bike. It looks absolutely stunning, and that's the third pro. Cons. And talking about cons while we're inside the dealership, let's see if no one hits me. Okay, first con, the weight. It's the elephant in the room. This weighs 228 kilograms, which is 500 pounds or so. It's too much, or 450. It's way too much. It's an almost ridiculous amount. It is a ridiculous amount for a naked bike. Even by a non-naked bike standards, it is too much. The other con is the engine. The engine doesn't have that launch you would associate with a 750. It's not like the Japanese bikes where you roll throttle, and if you have a pillion, he's going to fly off. Just disappears down the road. No, this is a bit more calm. It's a calmer engine.
But these two together lead me to believe that this is by design, which is very odd. Who would put LEDs on the bike? This has to have LED somewhere. By design? Have they gone mad? No. I've been with this bike a week, and I think I found the idea. The idea is that they spent the money, they put the price tag to be solidly in the middle of the Japanese range, to show that they can do this. And to show that they can really do this, they had to put something else. So the extra, suspension and brakes. But that extra is a lot of money, so they had to cut corners somewhere else. And since they're doing a more adult bike, because this is a more adult bike for more the guys with a bit of a gut, not the young blokes, they decided, okay, don't care about the weight. Let's not waste money reducing weight. Let's just make the bike with the suspension, with the brakes, make it really nice looking, well running, and then see where we're at. And they arrived at this weight. Why spend the extra money if they want a calmer bike? It's a way to calm the engine, keep it at 750, keep the 77 horsepower, keep the capability of going 200 kilometers per hour or more, but tame it a bit. Maybe it's that. It's like, we're not going to make the bike cost 9,000 euros and make it perfect, lightweight, super suspension, etc. Let's keep it at 750. We have to cut corners. They cut corners on the suspension because the competition usually has basic suspension and brakes. They're not bad, but they're just normal. Let's put some things above normal. Leave the weight. Let's ignore that. I can't say I agree completely. I understand the concept, and some people will actually agree, because I know there are some people who don't like the Japanese bikes because A, they're too young looking. That's a young bloke's bike. I don't want that. They're too nervous. It's just too much. I want something a bit calmer. So I understand the idea. It's a small con. Another very small con on this bike is these buttons. This is nitpicking, but these buttons are just normal. Fine, they're a bit even cheap looking, especially this emergency light one is very cheap looking. These would not look out of place on a Benelli 302, but they do look out of place on this one because this whole bike is gorgeous. Even this engine cover has a little finish that looks like fake carbon fiber, just the pattern, and it's an actual pattern. It's just not printed, it's an actual pattern on the plastic. Everything here has awesome little details, but these buttons don't. They just look out of sorts. It's nitpicking a lot, but that's to what I have been reduced, trying to find an actual negative point on this bike, except for the elephant in the room, which is the weight, because it's really solidly built. This seems like it was built by Benelli to show that they can do it. Show to the world that, hey, Benelli's back and we can make a proper, good motorcycle that can go head to head with the Japanese ones. There it is. It's not perfect yet. There's still some things to improve. Buttons, weight, Benelli, please. But it's a really good, nice step. This can actually compete with them, and this will sell to the more adult of us who really don't want a young bloke's bike. They just want a nice bike with that 90s, 2000s feel of the old Hornets, the old XJ6s, which were a bit heavy. Not these lightweight, spiffy, young ones bikes. I want a calmer, more adult bike. Seems nice. Some of you might have noticed. Now, let's shift into our safety plug of the day. That this is not my jacket. It is not. I asked Ramimoto for this one just for this video to show you guys. This is a fully protective. Doesn't have the back, but no one has. None of these have. You have to buy the back protector as an extra or use your own. But full protection, seriously. Okay, this is actual abrasion resistance. Full mesh everywhere. Summer jacket for 120 euros. Guys, there is no excuse to go to the beach with a t-shirt. Okay? This is less than what your wife spends on a bag because it's cute. It's less than what she spends on new sunglasses because the lenses are rose and she likes the rose lenses. Okay? Just tell her, nah, this month I have to buy this. I'll buy something nice for me. It's 120 bucks. Come on. It's not a lot of money.
and you get protection, and that's the top of the line. You actually get cooler with this than with a t-shirt, because this is cooler than a t-shirt. Trust me, I've tested it. Okay, so yeah, that's my plug of the day. It's by Ixon. They sell it here. It's really comfortable. It's actually a pretty comfortable jacket, and I was not expecting it to be this comfortable. Okay, so that's it. Cage out. Sound also, so it gives a good overall sound for the bike. And we have some Harleys coming through, so let's pause a bit for the Harleys. And they had to park here. And they're still waiting. We're waiting for the Harleys to park their fat asses because they can't maneuver. Not only the bikes can't maneuver, the riders can't maneuver. It's really quite a spectacle. Half of these are people who only ride once a year, and they had to come here today. Great. Oh, they're quiet now. Okay. Onwards. Where was I? Oh. Going back, continuing back after the